Reality changes when you look at it. No, you didn't mishear that. Not when you touch it. Not when you change something. Just when you observe. Sounds insane, right? But that's exactly what physicists discovered in one of the strangest experiments in modern science, the Double Slit Experiment. What this experiment revealed wasn't just about particles. It was about you, about your role in existence. Because it points to something that shatters everything we were taught. Reality might actually depend on your awareness to exist. And now, imagine if that wasn't just science. Imagine if it was a message, a hidden code embedded in the laws of physics, something whispering that reality only unfolds when you awaken. Because inside you, there is a frequency, a presence, a truth that never disappeared. It was just covered by stories, distractions, programming, and now it's returning, slowly but inevitably. The technique you'll discover today isn't a theory. It's a practice, a key to access that state where observation doesn't just affect matter, it transforms you. But before we continue, here's a warning. This video is not for everyone. It won't give you quick formulas. It won't promise you a new identity. It will remind you of something you might have never fully forgotten. It will ignite a spark that's been quietly waiting for the right moment to burn again. Because the question here isn't how to live better, but what if reality is shaped by your awareness? What if the soul, like electrons, shifts when it's observed? What if what you call the world is just a reflection of your own awakening? Most people will never ask this. They'll never look beyond the surface. But if you've made it this far, maybe something inside you refuses to accept that life is only what can be seen. In the next few minutes, we'll cross an invisible line together. The boundary between what you've been told is real and what you feel is real. We'll dive into a forgotten ancient practice, a technique that merges science and spirit, as if physics wasn't made only to measure the universe, but to reveal the soul. If something inside you feels ready to wake up, stay. If you feel there's more to life than noise, numbness, and repetition, listen. And if you want YouTube to keep showing you content that expands your consciousness, subscribe. Turn on the bell and help us spread this memory. Because deep down, you're not here to learn. You're here to remember. Why does reality change when you observe it? That question shouldn't even exist. Because according to everything we were taught, the world out there is solid, predictable, objective. But modern physics breaks that apart. The Double Slit Experiment isn't just a scientific trick. It's a crack in the foundation of what we think is real. When electrons, those tiny particles that make up everything, pass through two slits, they behave like waves. But the moment they are observed, they become particles. That means your awareness, your act of watching, changes the outcome. Your consciousness alters matter itself. Let that sink in. You live in a world that responds to your presence, a universe that watches you back. And this isn't wishful thinking or spiritual fluff. It's what science, reluctantly, is beginning to whisper through equations and experiments. Reality might not exist without awareness. Now pair that with something older than science, ancient spiritual wisdom. Almost every ancestral culture spoke of the soul as eternal but asleep. They said we came from the all, forgot, and got trapped in illusion. That life isn't something to be learned, but to be remembered. And now, modern science starts hinting. Maybe consciousness is not in the universe. Maybe it creates it. Is this coincidence? Or have we always known deep down? In this video, we'll explore a practice that unites those two visions, science and spirit, to access something within you that already knows. Because this isn't about learning another technique. It's about awakening a memory you never fully lost. And here's the key. This technique is not something you copy from a book and apply like a formula. It's more like the electron's behavior when no one's looking. Fluid, alive, mysterious. It unfolds in you. When you stop trying to control everything, we'll talk about vibration, frequency, universal symbols, forgotten rituals. But more than anything, we'll talk about your remembrance. Have you ever felt there's something greater, but couldn't quite name it? That life is more than working, consuming, and repeating. That strange emptiness in your chest, like something essential is missing. Maybe that emptiness is exactly where the truth wants to shine again. Today, we'll cross that space, and not with theories, but with a calling. Because the forbidden technique you'll discover, and yes, it has been considered dangerous for centuries, isn't feared because it's false. It's feared because it's too powerful to be tamed. It doesn't belong to any religion, government, or guru. It belongs to you. And maybe that's why it was hidden. So let me ask you this. If observation changes reality, what happens when you observe yourself with total presence? What happens when your soul, at last, sees itself? That's what we're about to find out. Science has discovered something spirituality has been whispering for thousands of years. When electrons change their behavior just by being watched, they're not simply reacting. They're revealing a secret, a hidden pattern woven into the fabric of reality. A message that says, consciousness is not an add-on, it's the core of everything. And if that's true, then everything changes. Because we're no longer talking about beliefs or doctrines. We're talking about laws of nature. Laws that place you at the center of the stage, that suggest the universe is literally shaped by your inner state. And as that sounds familiar, it's because it is. Now think with me. Why do most people feel disconnected? Why do we carry this chronic emptiness, that sense we're always about to remember something essential, but never quite reach it? The answer lies in the first pillar of the technique, deprogramming the false self. Imagine your soul as a perfect melody, a pure, ancient sound that's been playing forever. Now imagine that melody being layered, covered by noise, limiting beliefs, traumas, expectations, comparisons, fear. Those layers aren't you, but over time, you begin to mistake them for your identity. You get used to saying, "This is just how I am," but what you're really saying is, "This is how I was shaped." And the technique begins with that, recognizing what isn't yours. This requires brutal honesty. Ask yourself, where do my thoughts come from? That fear of not being enough, that constant need to please, the urgency, the guilt. Is any of this really mine? Or was it planted in me by someone, some system, some narrative? You've been conditioned to live outward, to build an identity based on approval, to follow an invisible script that tells you who to be. But that will never work, because your true self doesn't fit in anyone's formula. Deprogramming doesn't mean rejecting the world. It means stop confusing the noise with your essence. So how do you do that? Silence, observation, presence. The technique invites you to watch your thoughts like you would watch a movie, without judgment, without changing anything. Just watch. And when you do that, something magical happens. The false begins to fade. What wasn't created by you begins to dissolve. This is the first break in the simulation. And yes, that word carries weight, but it's useful here because on some level, we're all living in a simulation, not built by machines, but by conditioning. A simulation designed to make you forget, to turn life into repetition. Now, let's go deeper. The second phase of the technique is activating the inner sense. Once the noise starts to fade, something begins to rise, a kind of perception you felt before, but maybe never noticed. A silent clarity, not coming from logic or emotion, but from a deeper center. This sense can't be taught, but it can be awakened, and that's where symbols, rituals, and altered states of consciousness come in. Not as theatrical mysticism, but as tools to reawaken that forgotten sense. Conscious breathing, deep visualization, silent meditation, body posture, focus, directed imagination. When you visualize a universal symbol, like an inner flame, a mirror, a lotus, you're not creating fantasy, you're accessing an archetype, something that's been living in your unconscious since the beginning of your existence. Here's the key: what you imagine with clarity and devotion, your soul accepts as real. Science already shows that the brain responds to imagined stimuli as if they were real. That's not just neuroscience, it's spiritual technology. And this technique uses that to build a bridge between your surface mind and your essential self. Think of the ancient Indian rishis. They spoke of smarana, the act of remembering the soul. They weren't teaching anything new. They were saying, you already know. You just need to brush off the dust. Activating the inner sense is that, removing the blockages. And what rises cannot be explained, only experienced. Now we reach the third phase, resonance with your true name. This is the subtlest and deepest part, and maybe the most dangerous. Not because it harms you, but because it doesn't let you return to being the same. The true name of the soul isn't a word, it's a frequency. Every serious spiritual tradition speaks of it. No matter the label, sacred name, primordial sound, word of power, they all point to the same thing. There is a unique vibration that is yours, and when you access it, everything changes. You don't remember it logically. You don't understand it. You feel it. A silent certainty. A vibration so familiar, you cry without knowing why. It's like someone finally called your real name, and you just now realized you've spent your whole life answering to one that wasn't yours. Here's the paradox. To access that frequency, you must live as if you already know who you are. Not wait for revelation to act, but act as if you are, like an instrument tuning itself to a sound it hasn't heard, but already knows. This is the turning point. Until now, you've been peeling layers, awakening senses, harmonizing your field. But from this point forward, you begin to live the remembrance, not as an idea, but as a presence. Remembering who you are is not a one-time event. It's not a single spark of clarity that changes everything in an instant. It's a living process, a silent unfolding that, once it begins, never truly stops. Your soul starts to reorganize, not in a dramatic outward explosion, but like a seed pushing through the dark soil, quietly, insistently toward the light. And that movement, beautiful as it may be, brings something unexpected: fear. The fear of transformation. Because even when the soul begins to wake up, there's a part of you that resists. The familiar, even if painful, feels safer than the unknown. The ego, built on repetition and control, prefers the discomfort it knows to the liberation it doesn't. That's why, after the first glimpses of clarity, many people retreat, not out of weakness, but because the next step demands something rare: the courage to face your shadow. You cannot remember who you are without also remembering everything you are not, and that includes pain, old wounds, forgotten traumas, choices you avoided, parts of yourself you've locked away. Awakening brings light, but that light reveals everything. It shines into the corners where your truth was hidden. Many mistake this stage for regression. They say, I feel worse. I'm more emotional. I thought I was healing, but everything's coming back. But they're not falling apart. They're detoxing. The soul, as it returns to its original vibration, begins to reject everything that doesn't resonate. This isn't punishment. It's purification. Just as the body needs to release toxins to heal, the soul must shed the illusions that dim its light. So what happens when you observe that pain with full presence? It changes. It loses its grip on you. It no longer defines you. It transforms into wisdom. This is the spiritual alchemy, the sacred process of transmutation, and it begins the moment you stop running and start looking. This is where the technique becomes practical. You begin to access states that ancient mystics described as conscious trance, not hypnosis, but expanded awareness. You still feel your body, but you feel something more. You still think, but your thoughts no longer control you. You act, but not from habit, from presence. In these states, emotions become clearer. Time feels softer. Intuition sharpens, and suddenly, knowledge you've never studied begins to surface. Visions, insights, memories that feel ancient, like you've always known them but never accessed them. And maybe you have. Maybe what science can't explain with textbooks, quantum physics can hint at. Because when you touch the soul's frequency, time dissolves. Past, present, future. They're just aspects of vibration. At this depth, the soul begins to remember not only who it is, but where it came from. It remembers the sacred, the eternal, the unseen. This is why many spiritual traditions warn that this path is not for the unprepared. Because once the door opens, it doesn't close. You can't unknow what you now know. You can't go back to pretending, and yet, life continues. The world doesn't pause. Your routines don't vanish. But something inside you, something fundamental, wakes up, and it watches everything differently. This brings the next challenge, living the remembrance in the everyday world. It's easy to feel aligned in silence, on retreats, in sacred spaces. But what about when you're stuck in traffic, in the noise of social media, in the middle of conflict? That's when the soul's awakening is tested, not in theory, but in embodiment. Real spiritual practice is not about escaping the world. It's about walking through it with new eyes. It's about recognizing that every moment is sacred, not because it's quiet or perfect, but because you are present in it. The awakened soul turns daily life into ceremony. It transforms silence into a teacher, routine into rhythm, noise into a mirror. This presence cannot be forced. It grows from choice, from intention, from living as if every step matters, because it does. Every breath, every glance, every word can carry your remembrance. When you speak, do it from your center. When you listen, do it with your whole being. When you move, do it as if your soul is moving through you. There is no such thing as an ordinary moment. There is only presence or absence. When you're present, you live the technique. You don't need candles or mantras, though they help. You need coherence. You need to treat your life as if it's alive with meaning, because it is. Every choice you make either nurtures the soul's memory or buries it deeper. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be real. The soul doesn't ask for flawless behavior. It asks for sincerity, for alignment, for the courage to act in resonance with your inner truth, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one understands. The soul doesn't thrive in constant doubt. It needs space. It needs silence. It needs to be trusted because it already knows. It's always known. And it will show you what you forgot if you stop trying to control the process and start honoring it. So here's the truth. Remembering who you are is remembering that you never stopped being, that the search was never outward, that the great forbidden secret isn't some mystical technique. It's the unbearable simplicity of this truth. You are already it. You don't need to chase it. You don't need permission. You don't need perfection. You just need to return to your center, breathe, and allow. Because what awakens a soul is not noise. It's vibration. It's clarity. It's you. But now that you've started to remember, a new question emerges. What happens when the world around you doesn't change with you? Because awakening is just the beginning. The real challenge begins when you realize the world still tries to pull you back into patterns, that systems still feed distraction, fear, and noise. That not everyone will understand the new silence blooming inside you. So, how do you stay anchored? How do you keep this light alive in a world that profits from your sleep? That's the next phase. The technique we shared here doesn't end with this video. It opens doors, but it's you who must walk through them. And with every breath, every choice, every act of quiet presence, you keep that memory alive. So if something lit up inside you, don't let it fade. Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep feeling, and most of all, keep watching, because the next video that appears here might be exactly what your soul was waiting for. And maybe, just maybe, you'll realize it wasn't just another piece of content, but a message, a whisper, a sign you left for yourself long before you forgot. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.